Good morning. It's 10 o'clock Pacific time on, gosh, what day is it? June 28th in the year of 2012. This is Open Hours. I'm here with Eric Ferriulo, and Gonzalo Cordero is here with us this week. We're going to be talking about TreeView. TreeView is one of those components that we had in YUI 2 for such a long time. It's one of the core components of YUI 2. I think it was one of the earlier components, in fact. Yes, it was one of the earlier components because I remember there being a lot of drama about how it was rendered in the markup in YUI2, because I think it was using a lot of tables, nested tables, and the semantics for that were just not very good. But anyway, so we're going to be talking about TreeView this week because with a lot of help from Gonzalo, we were able to finally get something for TreeView in YUI3. A lot of people have been waiting for this, and so now at least we have something for you to get your hands on and start using, extending, and giving us feedback, filing tickets, that sort of thing, right? Let's see. Before we get started into the detail of TreeView, any news that we have, I guess the notable news is from yesterday. There was some asset outage going on from our CDN, which was really bad news. I don't know too much of the details about it, but there was something about the content being gzipped twice, and so when it was downloaded by the client, then they would ungzip, the client would ungzip it, and what they would get in after the gzip was gzipped content still, as it was done twice. So I don't know the details about that, so we're going to figure that out. We have a meeting to get the details on that just after this one, so I don't have a lot of info for you. So hopefully we'll be doing a postmortem on that one, but there's a blog post on YUI blog that at least describes it a little bit, and it gives you an email to say, whether or not you're still experiencing any issues. Otherwise, I think we're still on track for the what will now be PR4. That's sort of the scheduling surprise that's associated with TreeView here, which will be, I think, on July 18th, thereabout. And that will be PR4 because this is PR3. So what we decided was we were having some trouble getting TreeView into the code base just because it didn't have API docs. There were some issues around the API docs, and the user guide was still a little thin, and we needed some examples for it and that sort of thing. So the code hasn't changed in any significant way in the last couple of weeks, but it just missed the PR2 deadline, and we just couldn't unfreeze for it. So what we decided to do was break from our normal schedule of the 3 PRs followed by a GA and issue a special preview release just for TreeView, because we understand that it's very important to a lot of people, and we all really want to see it out the door. So we made that happen. We now have a 360 PR3 available on the CDN, just like the PR2 is available on the CDN. It does have a few other minor changes from feedback in PR2, and like test coverage and stuff like that has been improved a little bit in PR3, but nothing that impacts any of the other components in any significant way or even in any way. Eric, do you know of any actual code changes that were on master before TreeView got pushed in there?
They were all documentation changes besides one autocomplete bug fix that got in. So we cut a branch called 360 PR3 from master, and then we merged in Gonzalo's working branch, topic branch for TreeView into that. And
Okay.
so the PR3 branch that we have on GitHub contains TreeView stuff. The tag for PR3 is also associated with a commit on that PR3 branch, and we also have been adding commits to that branch, which were documentation changes only. So the staging website is
Okay.
updated with PR3 information and pulling from that branch. So anytime we update docs for the TreeView stuff in the next couple of weeks here, we can update staging. So.
Nice. Um, so just a note for the folks in Connect: when you move around the screen, the screens and the pods and things like that, it actually changes for everybody. So if you wouldn't mind putting it back the way you found it, that would be ideal. So as I said, PR3 is available today on the CDN, and so just like PR2, please have a look at it. You can continue to use PR2 if you're using PR2 and you're not planning on using TreeView, but if you're here with us in Connect, or if you're watching the video, then you probably care about TreeView. So with that, know that you can get in PR3. So we'll continue on doing little bug fixes and things like that, critical fixes for what will now be called PR4, which is on in mid-July, followed by GA. So please, if you're using TreeView, now is the time to exercise that from PR3. And Gonzalo, how much now, TreeView has been in the gallery for a little while, but in somewhat of a different form. Can you give us a little bit of a history about its life in the gallery and how much has changed from the gallery version or versions versus what's now in PR3?
Sure. Yeah. Can you guys hear me fine?
Come through okay, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Let's see. Well, the first thing I want to say is that I was able to maintain the tables for markup just to make everyone happy. No more tables, no more tables. Now it's all semantic, but yeah. So the idea with gallery was to I personally needed to do something. I needed to use it, and so I created my own version. And it's been in gallery. I think some people have been using it, and when we decided to start talking about merging into the main branch, um, we knew that if we wanted to go with an improve and make it work for all the cases, we knew that performance was going to be an issue with the current gallery version, just because that was based on it was still based on like pure DOM rendering, and so that posed a problem when it came to working with large trees that had a lot of nodes. And so that I think that was the major roadblock and the main driver to make whatever changes that that made into the main branch from going from gallery into yeah.
Into the
So
core development.
so yeah, I mean yeah. So basically, the major overhaul it's just around the way it's rendered. Um, just so because we wanted to make it so it works everywhere, and on mobile, and also cover the cases where you have a large set of nodes. Yeah.
Just a note, like Eric was saying, that we are pushing the documentation out to staging, and the code is also there. So you can actually get to TreeView on stage.yuilibrary.com. I know it's kind of hard to see in the URL, but it is there in the user guides. TreeView is there, and has at least one example there, and the API docs are in place as well, so you can dig through there.
All right. So basically, the most interesting part about TreeView really is what's going behind and what's going on underneath the widget, um, and the widget part and the widget child. So when we sat down again to talk about performance, so to design how TreeView will work, we noticed that there was a huge performance hit whenever we were rendering a bunch of nodes. And so Satyen had this idea in mind for a while where he was toying around playing with some prototypes where he would have widgets render based on just strings instead of markup. And so, he suggested that maybe TreeView could be the first prototype or the first widget to take advantage of that. And again, there's some performance reasons for doing that, but also um, if we, just thinking about the whole Node.js and server side and things like that, if we were able to do that, and just create widgets that are DOM agnostic, we could basically just render and create widgets on the server too. And so we start working on a solution that would be not DOM-less and that would be using string replacement to represent in a way a DOM, but without being rendered. And so really that's the most interesting part, in my opinion, about TreeView is that it's being the first widget that is purely stream based for rendering, and that gave us huge performance benefits, and also the ability to be able to render on the server with Node. And so what we did is with TreeView now you get this other class called TreeView HTML render, which we're hoping, or Satyen is hoping that he can merge back into widget at some point so that every widget can actually take advantage of this and render via strings and not having to mess with the DOM and things like that. On top of
So
that,
you're
also, yeah.
so Gonzalo, you're talking about the widget string render class extension, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so that eventually the idea is that once it's proven to work and here with TreeView and Satyen also has some time, he's been thinking about merging that back into widget, uh, so that anyone can actually, if they decide to do so, choose to render their widgets just with the strings rather than just DOM objects or elements. Um,
Yeah, there are definitely, from my work with data table and just from discussions that I've had and some feedback that I've had from the community and from from a chat that Eric and I had yesterday with regards to how things are broken out. The notion of doing string rendering is really useful for creating things, but when it comes time to do mutation of things, then you do have to start moving over into the DOM, and so there is. It's a totally viable story for the initial rendering of something, and you can do that on the server or on the client, pushing out via strings to have it be super fast. But when you start modifying what exists instead of maybe just adding a bunch of new stuff, then uh, you you can run into some trouble if people are if you're recreating content via strings as data table is doing right now in 3.5, and I'm getting some feedback on that. When if implementers are going to be capturing nodes and then storing those nodes, and then you might be repainting something by re-rendering it using strings, then those nodes then become dead. But I'm wondering if there's any sort of mutation or mutability in TreeView and how you dealt with that actually.
right. So yeah, that brings up a good point. And did that we did see a few gotchas, by doing this. Also, by the fact that preview renders on demand. So basically, we don't really bring in anything we don't show anything. We don't actually create the child nodes until you need them. Um, and so we run into the cases where what if you actually try to access a node or trying to call a node and get a property from a tree leaf that is not there yet, and how we would deal with those cases, would we just give it to you at that point? But then what happens when the actual render happens? With all the children of that tree needs to be re-rendered, will be rendered twice and things like that. So there's definitely some gotchas and some corner cases where I think we still need to cover. But I think for the main idea, for the vast majority of usage of how people are going to be using it, for TreeView was a great um, candidate to use the screen rendering. Um,
Yeah, totally.
so yeah. So with that,
So,
you also just yes, go.
well, I was going to say, I think maybe before we start going off too much onto into the gritty details, why don't we do
Yes.
a high-level coverage of what the API is and what the features are, what the most in-demand features are or were, as you understand from YY2. And Satyam is actually on the channel here, so he can certainly give us feedback about what items that were most common for YY2 TreeView usage, and so the high ticket items uh, for TreeView and YY3.
Um, just to yeah, so just wanted to reiterate also that TreeView is based still on widget parent on widget child. So I mean most of it comes from it, and TreeView really just adds a few sure syntax methods on top of that, as well as the visual representation. But in the end, at the end of the day, all TreeView is just something that is based on widget parent and on widget child, with they've been there and being used for a while now. So what that gives you is just all the things that you will expect from something that is hierarchical. So like things like who is my root, who's my parent, how many children do I have, add a child, remove a child, select a child, and things like that. So again, just preview is just something that sits on top of all that and adds um, a couple of properties to maintain the state of things. So things like so if we go into the attribute, the configuration. So it's like maintain a state of collapse. So like when you can retrieve the state of a tree and um, the labels and just visual representation in general. So that's kind of like the high level of how the I guess the architecture of a tree view, and without really going into too much details. But yeah, so anything that you expect from a tree: expanding, collapsing, removing, adding, and yeah, selecting.
So the lazy load is pretty important, right?
Yes. So the lazy load is that what I was mentioning earlier, where basically it's always default by true, and you can turn it off if you want to. But basically, all it does is that it defers rendering until you actually need them in your tree nodes or your tree leaves onto the page. So only when someone clicks on a tree, or to expand it, at that point, if the tree hasn't been rendered yet, is when we actually do with the instantiation of the children. And then we still using string based, so we just create a strings, and then we inner HTML the whole content at once. Um, on top of that, also, we know that you still need DOM references for your, just say, imagine that you want to get into a tree node and get the label or change the form and the look and feel of a tree leaf. So for that, the way you would do it is you get the element, and then you want to access the content box. And so content box, it's at that point you do need a DOM reference being created in order for you to manipulate that element. And maybe this goes back to what you were mentioning earlier, Luke, with the what happens when you want to mutate an element that is already rendered. So at this point, when you want to access the content box, is the only time where we actually create the DOM preference for you. And so again, we're just trying to push and delay the DOM element creation as much as we can. And same with the rendering, the widget rendering or the widget instantiation until you actually need it. So only when you things like get content box is when we actually go ahead and create the DOM preference for you. In the meantime, all you have are just strings and a set of objects that has some sort of notion of what their state is. Yeah, so that's that kind of ties into the whole lazy loading aspect of it. Just for performance gains.
Right, so we're not creating so many instances of objects and things like that, right? So in the widget parent and widget child situation, every time you create a tree leaf or a tree node or tree leaf, then you're going to be creating an instance of widget parent and widget child, making
Yeah.
those associations and things like that. So avoiding for a deeply nested or a very large tree, then that would definitely be a huge performance win for not creating node instances and also not creating widget parent, widget child instances as well. So in terms
Yeah.
of like in terms of the user interaction,
Yes.
when I keep getting ahead of myself. Um, I'll just ask the question later. I'm sorry. Go ahead and go over the API. Now, I don't know actually if most of the people that are on the call or even most of the people that will be watching the recording are that familiar with the widget parent, widget child APIs because frankly they haven't been used in any other widgets, right? And there you are. Victor's familiar, so we'll get him on the call and you can describe it. I think it would be worthwhile to go over the widget parent, widget child APIs as well, just for a little bit of
Should we do that now, or?
context. Yeah, sure. Just take a couple of minutes, really briefly, before we get into a little bit more detail of TreeView. So, widget parent, as far as I know, is based on ArrayList, right?
Yes. Yes, correct.
Which is just a simple sort of a foundational class for that works in a very similar way to NodeList, where you have a class that represents an item in the thing, and then you have some collection class like a model list or node list. So ArrayList is sort of a very low level, just generic collection class. And then widget parent is also based on ArrayList. But there's obviously mutation on top of that, and for use in widgets, you'll certainly want, right, so you have your add and remove. But for widgets, you'll want mutation events, which aren't super low level in ArrayList, so ArrayList doesn't actually provide any sort of mutation events in it. So adding or removing items from an ArrayList isn't going to be firing events. But that is important in the context of widget parent. So at this point, I've almost exhausted my knowledge and my familiarity with widget parent, widget child. But that's what I know to be true. So when you modify
Right.
stuff
Yeah.
in a widget parent, widget child, you get events.
Yeah. I mean that I think that says it all. Just yeah, it's just more of a utility widget that with the idea that other widgets are going to be using it. Anything that needs to maintain the state of the knowledge of I am a child of someone, or hey, I have children, that's when you want to use widget parent or widget child. And in the case of TreeView, one of the most interesting parts is that anything can be a parent, a child, or both at any given point. So you can have this concept of branches. Of a branch is something that is a child of someone, but he's a it's a tree at the same time. And so basically you just have both API methods with your parent with your child. And so yeah, just like look describes, you just get the things like add or select, remove, um, and looping through each and things like that. And then also has the being able to listen for events, um, just for whenever you do things like adding or removing. And I think
And
yeah,
then the
with the child,
individual and then the
that's
individual modifications from the leaf nodes themselves. Those the events that are fired from the widget parent are those that relate to the collection itself. So a child is added or a child is removed. If a child is modified, then widget parent isn't going to fire an event. It's just going to bubble up the event that came from the child itself. Right.
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 And then with the child, it's pretty lightweight. It just it just provides this helper methods just to tell say it who's your parent, what's the root of the root of the whole structure, the whole tree, selected states, index, um, and then yeah, that.
So then we have the individual leaf node or the child class, which a child class is maintaining these additional attributes like selected, for example. Um, Index then, I guess, has to do with its position in the parent. It's interesting. And then, yeah, ordinal position in its okay, interesting. Um, So where was it? Oh yeah, so that would be one of the attributes of the parent as well, is maintaining which one of its children is selected, and I guess that's just sort of a convenience, right? So not only is there a relationship going on between the parent and the child, but there's also some sort of state associated with that structure. So we're adding things like selected or active or things like that. I forget what the particular attribute names were in widget parent, but there were two primary state related attributes. Right, active descendant and selection. Oh, multiple is kind of an interesting one. I don't know if are you using multiple or no, or is that something that
I think
TreeView
the
supports?
implementation. Well, I mean, TreeView supports anything that widget parent and widget child offers. So I mean, this right now I'm not really internally not really using it for anything, but they're there, and so they work. I
Okay, so
mean,
it
in
just
fact,
passes through to.
it
Yeah.
sacrifices. In fact, one of the most interesting. This is more of internal, but when I was writing the test cases for TreeView, what I did was just basically make sure that TreeView was just compliant with all the test cases of widget parent and widget child. So in other words, make sure that TreeView was able just to pass and use every single API that widget parent and widget child provide. Just just to reassure that yeah, anything that widget child and widget parent offers, TreeView can too. So.
Yeah, I
So
guess it.
that means that
Well, the code is.
each leaf
Go ahead.
node is a widget child and widget parent, right?
Yes. Not all of them, but you know if there's instances where you can have those. So by default you are a child, but if you are also a tree and you have a parent, then you are both a parent and a child. I don't know if that makes
Sure. Folders
I
are
mean
children. Folders are both parent and child, and then leaf nodes are just children.
exactly the branches. Yeah, so you can have a branch uh, and not just a leaf. And a branch is something that it belongs to another tree, but it has children of its own.
That's an
So
interesting
people are
question, actually.
wondering
From
in the
Go
the
ahead,
delay.
Eric.
People are wondering in the chat what type of performance you were seeing using all these widget instances, and if
Hmm.
the change to using string rendering was enough to make the performance what we want, or like what happens if you have a tree of say 100 items on iOS browser or something. Did you notice any type of performance issues with that?
So I'm hoping that I can actually write a blog post because I have a bunch of tests that we run back when we were talking about this. So I'm hoping I can write a blog post to talk about this and share some of the test cases that we run with this, just exactly this. So we will run like 1,000 nodes and see what happens. When in the case, just on top of my mind things I remember. In the case of on the old version when we were doing this on i6, for example, it will just crash the browser or just make it unusable. And then when we went into the string rendering method, I mean, it was still slow, but at least it didn't really, you still could use your computer, I guess, or, your browser. So that was interesting. And then, yeah, I mean, we definitely saw a huge performance boost by just not having just think of that every single time that you were creating those 1,000 nodes, you were creating a DOM instance and then putting it into DOM. So you were doing basically 1,000 DOM manipulation. Um, with this approach, which is creating one huge string and then inner HTML at once. So I mean, it just definitely reduces the time where the rendering time by a lot. So again, I'm hoping to write a blog post. If not, I'll definitely just make those tests available somewhere, put it somewhere, and so like people can see um, what what are the benefits of going this route.
Mm.
Yeah, including them in the source directory, like under test manual or something,
Okay.
would be awesome. And then, yeah, if you do a
Yeah.
blog post, that'd be great.
And we need pretty
Cool.
graphs.
Okay. I'll make sure.
All right. So that actually brings up. Well, I think Satyen should actually be joining us pretty soon. I'm not sure if he's maybe hiding in the room with Jenny and them folks back at
Yeah,
HQ.
I think he would be very helpful. Just because I think that this again the most interesting things that happened with TreeView was just the whole string rendering and widget. And
Hmm.
we did some interesting work there with templating and string substitutions and things like that. And it wasn't that all that easy either, because there's so many places where widget just expects DOM reference for different many reasons. So changing those around was that I guess that's just why maybe it took so long for us to get it right.
Why don't you jump us through the example that's on yuilibrary.com and Evan's probably also in the room with Jenny as well. I don't know if you guys have a mic set up or not enough computers or something like that, but I don't know if there's anybody else that wants to comment on the example or documentation. Okay, Evan's not there.
He can, we can give him, the mic essentially, right? If you want to.
Well, who?
Evan?
Evan.
Evan? Oh yeah, there he is.
Mhm.
Sorry about that, Evan. I
He's
thought
he's in it. He's in his own building. He's not over with the rest of them.
right. Yeah, if you want to interject anything, Evan, you have mic privileges now. And Satyen, the word on the street is Satyen is in a scrum stand-up, and he'll be with us in a few moments. But go ahead, Gonzalo.
Okay. So again, let me see. So this is the little the quote unquote more complex example where you're actually removing and adding some tree leaves. And again, I'm hoping I can maybe provide more examples in the future. Just with just wanted to get it out the door, and we were busy wrapping up things, and we didn't really have that much time to create that many good examples. But let's see. Let me just walk you through how this example works. So basically, the first thing you need is to instantiate your tree view, and so to do that, the only required attribute is the label, and this is the only thing that you always need to put in for your tree view. Otherwise, you get a default label blank, or I forget what it was, but yeah, you want to put your label for your tree in there, and then there you are. You have your tree. That's the only thing you need to get it up and running. So you add label, and then you render, and you're good to go. In this case, we also add in some children, and so we add in children, and again, for the children, you also need to specify the label for the tree leaves. And then the once we have our tree that we're gonna render it, and in this case we're also gonna expand it right away, just so again, because we're lazy loading everything, we wanted to be able to show it into the, just for the sake of example, we wanted to show it on the screen, because if you didn't expand it, then the tree nodes wouldn't be rendered, and there will be a reference to them, but they will not be present, and you wouldn't be able to work with them. So going back here, this is what you get by just those few lines of code. And so this example basically just let us add and remove leaves, just to play around with some of the widget parent and widget child APIs. So let's just go ahead and add a new leaf. And again, this also wanted to reiterate that this could be anything really. This input could be labels, can be form, and anything you want. Can be markup, can be anything. In this case, I think we're just adding. Let me double check a new. Yeah, so we're adding a new label in this case on click with it's actually just not text, but it also has some markup on it. So it's a span with a class new, and so that's the label. So we're doing markup injection, and that's what we will get our new leaf, custom new leaf with our own markup. We can also remove it. This case is always going to remove the first one on the on top, and so to do that, we basically we are a click listener, and on click we check if the item is if you're probably familiar with item by now. So that's the way you access elements on the tree as well. So just item. So item 0, and then we just go remove it if it's there. If it's not there, then we don't do anything. Yeah. So basically, that's the basic.
So Gonzalo, can you speak to how you can customize the rendering of a leaf node or a branch node?
Sure. So I mean, there's no custom render that you can provide to like calendar or some of these other widgets. Basically, what you can do is just as a label, you can pass in anything you want. So you can pass in markup if you wish, and that would go ahead and render as it will take it as is, just because we're doing a screen render. So anything that's in the label gets rendered as markup when the time comes. Does that
Okay,
make
so
sense?
I guess Satyen is now in the room. We're gonna figure out if we can get a mic going for him, and maybe he'll be able to go into more detail about the widget string renderer stuff. So let's see. But Gonzalo, I apologize. I asked the question and then stopped listening because it
It's
was
okay.
dealing with the
I know I
Satyen in the
repeat
room
it.
stuff.
So.
Please do.
No, you're gonna have to go to the recording now.
Oh,
This,
damn. Okay, that's fine.
yeah, so basically you can add in anything as a label. So your label can include markup, custom markup, and then just because it's all stream based, so it will
Mm.
just take whatever's in the label and render and put it into the tree for you. So
So
that's how
then,
you get away.
okay, so
Sorry.
then the label is just a freeform HTML input. So, but the label is though still going to be inserted or injected into a template of some sort. So can you modify the template?
Not yet, or not today. So we don't have a custom render like many kind of offers or some other widgets with that's not there. Um, so right now the only thing you can do is just specify a custom level label and inject markup, and then with CSS or whatever, just change things around.
Okay, cool. All right. So that's a feature coming, and maybe a pull request from the community, or anything else. So I
Yeah.
guess the last question before uh, the room at HQ that has Satya and Jenny and all the other fine YUI folks in there, um, they have the mic is now turned on. But before I hand over control to Satyen for a bit. Hopefully, he can give us a little bit of detail about the widget string rendering and some more detail about the performance aspect and the performance the rendering approach for TreeView and its use of widget string rendering. Uh, let's talk about the ownership of TreeView at this point. So you obviously have been, Gonzalo, you have obviously been working with Satyen and a bit with Alan and a number of other folks on the YUI team to get the component in from gallery updated using the latest and greatest for rendering it to deal with the memory issues and things like that in performance. And now, are you going to continue to own the component in core, or is it being owned by somebody else? How's that working out?
So I mean, I'm definitely open to that. We probably need to at least have another person. So probably Alan or someone needs to be familiar with it too, just in case, because I'm definitely gonna need a helping hand here and there. But yeah, I mean, it's been great, and it's been a great experience, and I will just recommend it to anyone. I think owning a component, it's it's just something that everyone should try at least once. So I would love to keep on going with it and help out as
Cool.
much as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And we'll go into any more detail about the widget string rendering strategy, techniques, and all sorts of good stuff like that. Hopefully in a blog post upcoming relatively soon. I know that Satyan's really busy working on super secret, awesome things, which is usually the case. Um, so let's see. Last notes before we close out. Well, first of all, it's great that there is now a TreeView in the source, and also great that that we had some time to focus on the performance issues and come up with a solution, or at least an approach. And this will give us an opportunity to vet that approach in the real world, and people will have a working TreeView in order to deal with that. And it now provides a canonical component, a canonical TreeView in the core code that uh, bugs can be filed against, feature enhancements can be filed against, and pull requests can be issued for. So have a look at the code. That, like I said, it is in PR3. It is available today, and so you can give that one a try. Like I said, being PR3, we're on schedule for PR4 in July. So now's the time to get feedback in, especially for TreeView. If you're going to be using TreeView, please exercise this right away so that we have some time to get critical fixes into 3.6.0, so we don't end up shipping an alpha product. We really don't want to ship an alpha product. So, but it has had a life in the gallery for a little while, and so hopefully it's not going to be. Hopefully it'll be pretty stable. We've had some pretty decent test coverage of it, and yeah, good point, Eric. Also contribute in the ongoing design discussions out on the wiki on GitHub. So on our YUI3 wiki has some ongoing development discussions. So here's widget string renderer, for example. Data access in YUI is also another interesting one. Attribute value filters, and Ryan proposed this one. I think it's a great idea. And of course, all of these things have to come to fruition, but we want to make sure that we're making the right decisions before we start going down the code path. So here we are. I guess with that, let's close it out. And if we don't see you next week, then we will see you in 2 weeks, and you'll obviously see the invite for the open hours on YUI blog. Like I mentioned last week, we will be doing another Mojito flavored open hours, but more geared towards introduction to Mojito and how to start from the ground up and go through the hello world sort of application. And then, as always, we are happy to get recommendations for open hours topics. If you have something that you want to show and tell, by all means, please reach out to us. Let us know. And you can find us on Twitter at YUI Library, or in the forums, and of course in IRC, in Freenode in the YUI channel, where there's a hopping little community and lots and lots of help for folks that have questions. So with that, we'll close it out. And so for Eric and Derek and Jenny and Satyen and all of the other folks, and Gonzalo, thanks again for coming in and showing us the wares. This is Luke Smith signing off, and we will see you again very soon.